You're on even though you can't see it.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I am your host this morning. My co-hosts, Sam Chase and Bob Hoey. Thanks, guys, for getting up extra special early. I wasn't here last week, and thank you so much for hosting last week. One of the things is that we're all hosts of something, so even though it says host, they're perfectly capable and worn those hats themselves for many, many times. We got John McDonough behind the camera, and we have John Moses scheduled to come in around 7 o'clock. We'll see what some of his conversation is. Next week, we do have, not that anybody's listening so early in the program, but we will mention it. Yes, I hope so too. We have Bill Olson, Everett Olson Jr. coming in next Thursday. He was the superintendent of Westford Public Schools for decades and retired from there, and I read a few articles that said he was the interim superintendent in Merrimack, New Hampshire, so it'll be interesting to see if we can get him to have a comparison, if any, between New Hampshire schools and Massachusetts schools. Plus, he's advocating for having something happen at Ledge Road in North Chelmsford because of the amount of trucks and stuff. He does not live on Ledge Road, he lives on Main Street. And so he's on a corner, so he gets a lot of traffic.
He gets the spillover from Ledge Road.
Yeah, and plus all the other stuff and anything else that goes by. And it's all supposed to be residential, and we'll talk about that next week. They do have a public hearing coming up at the
Zoning Board of Appeals.
and are they the one that's going to host it at the police community room station?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and that's on June 4th?
Yes, I think that's right.
Right, so we'll talk about that more probably next week. We don't really need to talk about it this morning because we want to make sure that we advocate for people going if they have any particular issues and to hear what has to happen with regard to that. So, you know, as we go along with the season, of course, this morning it was definitely daylight when I drove in. We're supposed to be getting storms. I took a look at the weather and made sure that I got out of the house really fast because we're supposed to get a tremendous downpour shortly. You can see at 6:08 a.m. It's
in Worcester. It's in Worcester now.
Yeah, it's not raining right now, but it will be raining, and we have showers, maybe a few thunderstorms out there today, tomorrow, and Saturday for that matter, so it's another one of those rainy weekends. We were going to bring the tractor up to property in New Hampshire so I can move rock. And Glenn said, well, if it's going to rain, I'm not doing that. I'm like, oh, I want to get some projects done. So we'll see how that goes and what our current plans are going to be, because we always have projects to do. A lot of stuff that we can talk about this morning. Does anybody have anything burning that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I would like to just say something short and sweet because it could take up probably the whole show. The city council meeting, this past city council meeting, there was, a lot of people had come up to the mic to talk about cutting $4 million out of the school budget. And I've been involved around schools for the past 30 years, and I've never, ever seen a superintendent speak or advocate for children like Liam Skinner did at the city council meeting. He basically put the brakes on. What's the brakes those truckers do, John?
Jack brakes.
Jake breaks.
Jake brakes. That's what it felt like to me at home. Liam Skinner put the brakes on, and they just had to stop and say, hey, well, let's go back to the, drawing board. Let's go back with the city manager. It was incredible. And the number one, the best speaker there was definitely Liam Skinner. Number two to me was Eric Gitcher. But the one that I give the most credit to is the mayor. Let's not forget who hired the superintendent. The mayor did, because on the city side of government, I'm not totally happy, I'm not going to lie, but on the school side, Mayor Rourke did an outstanding job hiring this superintendent, because if you go look at the replay, he wasn't reading it off a piece of paper, it was from his heart, and he knows how to fix this issue, and it was cutting tutors. Listen, to me, I could never vote for that.
Cutting what?
Some tutors.
Oh, tutors.
Yeah,
Right.
cutting paraprofessionals, I could never vote for that. And so it's all going back. They're going to draw it up, and all of us that are running for schools might have to go down and get on the mic
Well-
a little bit early in life. But it's just, and Sam, on the same side, education, I always learn the most of Evelyn, I do. And on the number side and the best bang for the buck when you're living low, it comes from you, Sam. And I know there's going to be another tax increase, easily about 4 to 5%, maybe even a little higher. I feel that in my bones. I don't know budgets, I don't know assessments. That's the stuff I learn off you here, Sam. So
Well,
that's a burning issue
Thank
for
you.
me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But let me ask you a question. So they have to take $4 million out of the school budget.
Yeah.
Now, what about the city budget? What's the reduction there?
I couldn't even tell you, Sam.
But they're going to have to make a reduction on the city side too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
either that or go up on taxes, right? I would
Exactly.
think, one or the
Yeah.
other.
So that'll be interesting. And in Lowell, you have the ability to do that because Lowell is one of about 30 or 35 municipalities in the state that is not taxing at the full levy that you are allowed to under the state. You're under the levy. So you have what they call excess levy capacity. So you are able to go up, more than the 2.5% because of that, because you have the excess levy capacity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but.
What is the deficit in the budget, the amount? Because if they were going to take 4 million out of the school budget and they were going to take some out of the city budget,
Yeah.
it's got to be a high number.
It has to be at least, I would think,
8?
7 or 8,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
the deficit is?
No, I don't. I just know that they were cutting $4 million. That's what, and it was
do we-
mostly like after-school programs, summer school.
Yeah, there was a
things.
list, because there was an
Yeah.
article I sent you guys.
Right.
I don't know if it was from the Lowell Sun. Because they were going to have some kind of demonstration or some kind of informational discussion Tuesday, which today's
coming
Thursday.
Tuesday?
No, last.
Oh,
this-
last Tuesday,
yeah,
so
the
we missed
12th.
it. All right.
So the 13th, I think it was, it was there, because I think I sent it to you over the weekend. But did they say what causes the reduction? Are they getting less money from the federal government or the state government? Or is it just that the costs of things have gone up so much that they can't meet their expenses?
Well, like every year, they don't know what they're getting off the state, though probably sometime in July. So they don't anticipate, any increase coming from the state. But I mean, if we watch we stay very involved, especially on this show. I know we do, that if you look at the federal government, they're telling you, we're cutting this and we're cutting that. It's coming down in education. That's how I feel. So right off the bat, my antenna goes up and saying, listen, if we cut, we have to cut support staff. We cannot cut teachers and paras. You just can't do it.
What about administrative staff? What about administrators?
You'd have to look at that. You'd have to look, to me, you have
See,
to look at.
I would go there first.
Yeah,
That's what
that
I
would
do.
be a good spot for a couple. You're not gonna get many out of there either, I don't believe, Sam. But you gotta look, in Lowell, we definitely gotta look at transportation. And the money that's costing us, if we change the way we do it and go to like a hybrid, neighborhood school type system, we might be able to save some big money. And if not, we're gonna be in court with busing anyways in the future. There's no doubt about it. Every town is gonna have a problem with busing. Because to me, everybody has a car. Even people that are in Section 8 and food stamps or whatever, they have a car.
It's amazing to me, and because we have grandchildren in the Chelmsford schools, how many parents take their kids to school and pick them up after school. When I was a kid in the 50s, I know John's going to say in the last century, which is true, last century,
The Wayback Machine.
but nobody did that when I was a kid. You either walked.
We weren't advertising pedophiles on TV.
Well, that's
Yeah,
true,
that-
but really, the reason I learned, and actually in my own family situation, the reason the kids are picked up is a lot of them have after-school activities. And if you wait for the child to be delivered home on the bus, oftentimes it's too late to get the kid to their activity. That's the case in my family, because my grandchildren are the farthest away from the school they go to. It takes 50 minutes for their bus. By the time they leave Byam, it takes 50 minutes for them to be dropped off. It's too late for some of their
Well, take a
after-school
look
activities. So
Take a
we
look
have
at
to
how
pick
far
them up.
down we are.
Yeah.
And we're almost into Westford and Carlisle. So, and I have grandchildren in the Chelmsford Public Schools also, and I have somebody that's a Parker, along with your oldest one.
Kids need such a long ride.
Oh, I'm not whining about
We
it.
walked.
Well, my,
Well, we don't have the neighborhood school situation. Plus,
Charlotte could walk. In fact, she has a couple of times, because they're close enough to Parker.
From the audience
Yeah.
this morning we have, good morning. They're looking for cuts on the next breath, extend the manager's, yeah, good point. They're looking for cuts on in the next breath, they extend the manager's and bump in pay. Disgusting government.
I think that issue right there, that will be one of the big issues in the city council.
Good angle.
How much are they?
Raise.
How much are they proposing to raise the city manager's pay?
He's making $1,000 a day.
Not bad.
well,
Is that
they-
180
Well,
days or 220
Sam,
days?
You know, I
supposed to
don't
be.
say this too often, but the person who runs the shelter, it's called SMOC, they make 300 grand a year.
What shelter?
The shelter in Lowell. The organization that runs it is called SMOC,
Smock.
and the chief bottle washer there makes 300 grand a year.
Well, that's not a bad gig.
No, that's for the homeless.
Yeah, we don't have enough time.
We have a lot of corruption in Massachusetts. Things have gone way
Yeah.
wrong here. If you don't like it, move.
Well, that's what I tell people. Move.
Well, anyway, we were talking about, you made the comment about buses.
Yeah.
We were talking about people driving kids to school. Some of them will drive to school because they don't want to pay the fee,
That's true.
because they do charge for it.
What is it, 250 or something?
I don't know, but to me, it's worth it to pay the $250
Oh, I
in
think
comparison to
so.
how much gas you have to do sitting in lines.
Time and everything?
And many times, just like you wear the hat of being the taxi for a grandchild. So I'm perfectly aware of, drop-offs, pickups, all of that stuff. But when you said that when you went to school, you walked, but when I went to school, we either walked or my parents drove us because we had neighborhood schools. And in the city of Quincy, in the 50s, there were no buses for the elementary schools.
Really?
Well, in the
Just letting you know.
In the city of Lowell, you lean, you're too tight on your mic, kid. In the city of Lowell, all we had was the city bus. And nobody rode that. I walked from here to Lowell High every day.
How much of a walk is that?
About a mile,
Oh, it's not bad.
about a mile.
Yeah, I was about a mile from my high school.
And
know,
most
it
of the
was
kids,
fine, yeah.
most of the kids, well, let me read what the comment to the audience. This is what you get when you have too much government and regulation, too many hands in the cookie jar. Speaking of which, homemade goodies, did you bring any today, Evelyn?
Yeah, I did,
Okay.
Yeah.
No cookies, though.
but not cookies. I
I'd like
didn't
to
bring
add
cookies.
something to when we were talking about busing, so you know where I'm at. I always thought we could have our own buses. I know we got 29 schools, maybe 30 schools by now, because we have bought a few buildings. But we could have our own buses, and I think if we offered, like, let's say a paraprofessional that's underpaid right now in this world, believe me, they are, and we could say, hey, we're going to double your pay, how about becoming a bus driver?
Well,
And-
yeah, but then
well,
they have to have,
I'm just giving you an example, that failed.
they have to have a Class D license.
No, I know, but you can
Not
say.
hard.
No, even.
I'm just saying,
When I worked at the prison.
some people don't know.
When I worked at the prison, the state gave out Class 1 licenses like they were candy. I don't know why I never accepted one, I just didn't want to drive a
But
truck
Bobby's
anyways.
got a good idea here. Right now, it's screw the bus drivers. We're not going to give them a pension. That's all they're missing. Same pay, but you get a pension.
Right, but we have a company,
Go too close to the mic.
we have a company that runs the bus company. They put Chelmsford Public Schools on it, but we don't own the buses.
Are the drivers,
They're
got a pension?
they're hired out of the company.
do they get a
because
pension?
I have no idea, because
I'll
No,
bet
they don't.
I don't
you
think
can
so.
ask John, when John comes in, since he's in the school department, maybe he knows the answers to those
He
questions.
probably does.
You know,
Just like when you guys get rid of the custodians out in Chesford, you're just screwing somebody out of a pension. That's what you're doing.
Well, there's a little bit more to it than
Lackluster
that.
service, but mostly that was to save money,
It was
wasn't
health
it?
insurance too, and then they also had, because they were asking for something, when originally I was on the school committee and we decided what we did with custodians, it was a difficult decision, but you had some of them that were not doing their job.
Yeah,
And they
that's
were
true.
doing things that was against the contract, and we couldn't get rid of them. For violations. And so it's like, well, after a while, like with a child, you certainly get tired of telling the kid what to do, so then you have to
It
take
is-
some different action.
It is true that in that particular case, and well, of course, you were on the school committee, but I remember it quite well. It is true that the custodians did not help themselves.
No.
Okay, they,
And the ones that were really good, then the company retained them.
that's right.
So.
You just said the wrong management company.
When we first started, yes.
Yes.
Now I think there's a hybrid model, and again, we can.
No, it works well now. Yeah, it works well now.
Most buses nowadays are half full if you're lucky, and more buses on the road. Big ones, small ones.
usually we'll come down.
New ones, old ones.
In Lowell, though, that issue usually comes down to say, they do this, they'll tell you, we need a middle school, a large one in Centerville on the other side of the Merrimack River. Once we have that, because the Robinson School is just not big enough, a middle school over there. If we have that, we could become neighborhood schools, but
Coming,
that doesn't
another
look like it's gonna happen.
comment from the audience, $250 charge for buses, 180 days, a little more than $1 a day. Seems like a bargain.
Yeah, well, see, that's how I looked at it.
Yep, exactly.
But there was some that, they're not going to use the bus every day, and they're only going to be picked up or dropped off or whatever, because my grandsons that are at the high school, they have after-school activities. So they stay, because that's how they've scheduled it at the high school level.
They have late bus, right?
And they have a late bus if you want to take it, but generally speaking, they usually get picked up if they
And
don't
why don't
walk.
they have seat belts on school buses?
That's a good question.
There's a lot of reasons. We looked into that. I advocate for seatbelts on school buses.
Okay, and they should have them.
And there should be 3 to a bench,
Yep.
a seat. When you get to the high school level, there's 2 people on a bus. There was and
Two in
so.
a seat?
2 in a seat, yes, because they're bigger people, they're wider. And
hope
that,
so.
and so there were pros and cons, and apparently part of the con aspect of it was the cost factor, not
Of
the
course.
safety factor.
Of course.
And the buses have to, they have to stop and look both ways before they go over a railroad bridge. I mean, they have a lot of different rules that increase the safety on the bus versus anything else. You don't hear of too many bus accidents, more car accidents and people that are stupid in how they drive. But that's the bus thing. Now, the comment that was made was how many kids are on a bus and why this and that and the other thing. But when you have the high school buses, Usually because kids can drive, or this is in Chelmsford. Lowell is a different situation, so your Suburbans are a
We
little.
have a garage for the kids.
Really?
Yep.
So it's not apples and apples here. But when you see only a few kids on some of the buses, in order to have the contract, you provide the buses at all levels because that's the way it goes, because you still have kids at the high school level that need to be picked up regardless of how many there are. That bus is then queued to then pick up the middle school students, and that's queued to pick up the elementary students,
think-
where most of the kids are on the buses at the elementary school level.
I think state law requires that you provide bus transportation service for those children that live 2 miles or more from their school. I think that's.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's still the rule?
Yes, and that's why those kids that live that distance away, I don't think you can charge
You
them.
can't.
Because it's mandated by the state.
You can't.
And
My daughter's, again, she was the farthest from Byham, and she said, oh, I got a good deal. 3 kids on the bus, and I don't have to pay because I live more than 2 miles. But then the downside was it took them 50 minutes to get home after school,
Yeah.
so, you know.
And this says the only time a school bus is full
Yeah.
is when there's a field trip. If you take a look at the elementary school buses, most of the time they are full. Or
That's
close
true.
to being
Yeah,
full
I think
on an
so.
elementary level. And it's only up to the 8th grade that you have to provide those buses for the 2 miles away. After that point, it's optional.
I volunteered to go to Foxborough with third graders, a bus full of third graders, and I'm telling you right now, I thought it was worse than being on a bus with wrestling team. It was unbelievable how many kids, not hurting each other, but just pulling each other's hair,
Oh, yeah.
smashing each other
Third
against
graders.
unbelievable. To me, and seatbelts to me would be great.
Speaking to this guy, okay, DW, thank you for your comment. It would be difficult to keep the kids belted in a safely operate the bus at the same time. DW, look I've had kids, maybe you're not lucky enough to have any kids, but before the car moves, you put your seatbelt on.
You do realize that the school bus driver wears a seatbelt, right?
Yeah.
See, the thing I like about school,
You know?
the bus, the seatbelts for the kids, safety, keeps them in their seat. Bully can't run around the bus and pull your hair,
Oh, there's all kinds of
kick you,
benefits.
do whatever, and run back to
Right.
his or her seat. They can't do that because they have to stay in their seat.
But
And the
also-
bus driver will say, this bus ain't moving until you got your seatbelt on.
But I will say it again, the bus driver has a seatbelt.
Oh, yeah.
They
No,
wear
if
a
you,
seatbelt.
if you listen to
That's
Superintendent.
right.
Yeah.
If you listen to Superintendent
teachers.
Skinner the other night, John, a lot of things I got out of his speech, but the one thing was he needs space. He also talked about how we gotta not get rid of tutors and paras because we have to teach these kids how to read before the 4th grade. And you can tell that's where his main goal is. That's what's really turned me on, because I've talked about it. I was a victim of that. I couldn't read. So you got to fake your way through school. A lot of kids can't read. Even in high school,
They
some of
say
them.
about 20%
Well,
nationally.
I just know that that's part of discipline also. You know, when I couldn't read in my younger years, right, and I had to stand up, Sam, you know how they did everything back in the
Oh,
old
yeah.
days, stand up in front of the class. There was no way I was going to do that. I said, I'm going to take the ruler, go out in the hallway. It was easier. In my opinion, the buckle is now a weapon in the hand of a child. Well,
That's one way to get kids to be
The teachers-
expelled.
The teachers should use those buckles.
Well, no.
You know what someone don't realize, though? I bet you the vice principal, you'll hear people say, what do we have vice principals for? We don't need vice principals. Well, let me tell you what they do for the first hour and a half to 2 hours. Go over film on what happened.
What do they do the rest of the day?
Well, listen, the first hour and a half, they're looking at film of things that happened on buses that shouldn't happen, okay? And so they have to then get the parent, the child, they have a lot to do before they even get, going around. What I think they should be doing is going around helping any teacher that might be weak, might need like team teaching. But you don't want to take a teacher across the hall, like, let's say Evelyn's across the hall and she's a science teacher. Oh, she's the best. Pull her out of there, have her go help Hoey in his class. That should never happen. I didn't like that idea years ago. I didn't like.
I never heard that.
Yeah, it was
No,
team
I-
teaching. Yeah, in Lowell, we had that. We have different things. Like, when I bring up, hey, why can't we be like Chelmsford? And I'll say this sometimes to people, I'll say, they got 5th and 6th separated from 7th and 8th. Why can't we do, oh, we can't do that in Lowell. Well, listen, if we're gonna pay all these millions in busing, we can do almost anything if we want. We got 29 or 30 schools. Why not try that? Why not look at some of the things Chelmsford? I know I
Well-
don't want to be compared to you, Sam.
No.
Because it's apples and.
But you bring up a good point, and this isn't just a Lowell problem. I mean, I've been in municipal government now for 30 years, and I'm telling you, in Massachusetts, we have an attitude problem in this state. We do not look at how other people do things. We don't do that. We sit here and we reinvent the wheel whenever there's a problem.
Very good point, Sam.
Okay, and my issue has always been, well, I'll just use MCAS as an example, okay? We have it, I don't want to talk about whether it's good or bad, we have it. The problem is that when they talked about getting a statewide standard, I said, why don't you look at New York State? New York has had the state regions for over 100 years. You think they may know something about how this is done? Oh, we can't look at New York. We're Massachusetts. That's the attitude.
Well, yeah,
We have an attitude problem in this state, and it's amplified because we have 351 little kingdoms called cities and towns in this state, all doing the same thing. And this is, when I was on the select board, this used to come up all the time. We'd have an issue and I'd say, well, why don't we look and see what Littleton is doing? Or why don't we see and look what Westford, oh, we can't do that. This is Chelmsford, okay? Come on, fellas, all right?
So
I mean,
remember,
it's a huge problem in Massachusetts.
Right, but
We
there's
have
another
an
p-
attitude problem.
right, but there's also another point to be made when we're looking at other communities. How many communities are you going to look at? Remember, we had at town meeting this year, a few weeks back, where they were going to change, the planning board was change the zoning, and they were going to change the definition of what is a family in the zoning article. And somebody said, well, where did we get it, and why did we get it? And apparently it was Brookline, and of course Glenn gets up and says, is it only Brookline? Did everybody change it? And it was Brookline that created it, and the Attorney General in Massachusetts said it was fine. So it's okay, as far as I'm concerned, you can look at other communities, not another community.
Let me ask you this. What would have happened if they had gone with the states, and that wasn't just a Brookline thing. Brookline adopted it, but that was the recommendation of the state, and you know full well as time goes on,
Oh, yeah,
it will
they're
be a
gonna-
mandate.
they're gonna
But let me
throw it-
ask you
push it
this.
down our throats.
If we had adopted that language, what would have happened? What bad would have happened?
Well, I don't know
The
that,
answer is nothing.
right, but what you're
Okay.
doing is you're becoming
It was a
more,
total waste of time. They
Well,
should
that's-
have, and I'm going to
well,
tell
they
you.
shouldn't have made it to begin with, because
One at a
they-
time.
And I'm going to tell you something, and I won't mention the name, but one of our select board members, previous select board member, badgered the town manager and the planning board to adopt that language, and then when it came up in town meeting, they voted against it.
Well, yeah,
All
they-
right?
because we
It's all political nonsense, okay?
so it's well, yeah, it's political, but.
nonsense.
When they redefine it, they didn't need to redefine it, because the question was, why are we redefining it? Well, we have to have it a broader definition. But when you read the definition that we had, if there was an issue with any individual group that they were concerned about, all the minorities of how a family
They
unit
did
would
it
be
so that,
defined.
they did it so that cities and towns couldn't use the existing language to be exclusionary.
But
That's
it
why they
wasn't.
did it.
When you read it, it covered like every single possible thing that you could think of.
My
Because
point-
they had the different, the
My point is,
phrase.
changing that language had nothing to do with zoning.
Yeah, but it was a hill that they chose to fight on.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Well,
The whole
I
di- the
had
whole
a problem
discu-
with it.
The whole
As soon
discussion
as
was
I'm telling you,
ridiculous.
as soon as I saw that, I didn't care what was in the rest of the article. I says, because I saw that if you had an issue, somebody had a discrimination issue, the current definition that we had could be used to help them.
Maybe. It wasn't as broad as the other one.
Well, I don't want something so broad that it doesn't define anything. You know, they had a family as a single person. How can I be a family? I thought a family had to have more than one member.
That
Are they including the dog and the cat and
Head
the
of,
fish?
no,
That other
no,
issue
it's
of-
not single person, it's head of household. That's
Law-
a different definition.
But that's not, that's.
That's legally, a head of household is a family, under the law.
Well, all I'm saying is it didn't make any sense to most of the people that were there, and they
No.
chose to, as I said, they chose to live or die on that particular
It was
hill.
the whole thing was ridiculous.
Well, even the other one was, that they were trying to get changes for. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah,
No, that's
no,
fine.
you're
But-
right. It
But
was-
I
it was
didn't like it at
ridiculous.
all, and then there was another article that they had, and there was something that they were gonna do with that, and I said, this is stupid too. I said, I'm not into wanting to change something for the sake of changing it. There's a lot of places where, especially in Chelmsford, we don't have as many issues as you have when you get involved in, a city where you have a much greater percentage of diversity. We have it, and we're dealing with,
Why-
especially in the school system, not to
Why
get back to
haven't,
education again.
why haven't all these towns in Massachusetts changed the term of Board of Selectmen to Select Board?
Well, I didn't like that either, but that's okay.
But what difference does it make? That's my point. Why even talk about it? Change
Well-
it. What difference does it make?
Well, it makes somebody feel good, and that's the
Exactly.
reason.
It has nothing to do with the rules and the law. It's a feel-good issue. It's a baloney. Change it. Make it Select Board.
And
What
the other thing
difference
is
does it
that
make?
those people that want to make it feel good,
Yeah.
oh, I won this one. I'm like, and what did you really win?
Nothing.
You know, so, and
But
how
you
is
know
that
what?
going to affect us?
Once it's done, and you never have to have the discussion ever again, okay?
But sometimes things go back
well,
to where it was before.
Very rarely, very
Well,
rarely.
especially in
I
Massachusetts.
think it was Evelyn that mentioned Brookline, but if you look back about a month ago, you can get online and look it up. Brookline was looking for like 8 million, their school budget, and the superintendent, someone that was hired from Lowell, a person from Lowell, resigned already.
The difference in Brookline is they do overrides.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get an override in Lowell, and you're not gonna get one in Chelmsford.
No, they got a ton of money for
You
sure.
know? It's
Yeah.
not happening.
Wherever
but,
I was
you
driving
know-
yesterday, on the South Shore, it looked like there was some other communities looking for overrides.
You know, if you go back, DEI
written
is
it
an
down.
issue that's it hurt Lowell a lot, the DEI issue, especially Lowell
It's
High
still
School.
here. DEI is still in law.
No, I understand, and it's
Grand
it's
slam,
hurt the high
Sam.
school.
This state is arrogant and full of dirty politicians.
And it isn't just at the state level,
But
it's at the local level.
Don't forget about the horrible news in this state.
Yeah,
Jay makes a good point that the news media falls down on their duty. They don't know what it is. Your
No.
job is to ask questions, and
No,
you
no.
don't.
Well, their job is to try to report whatever the facts are, not make it up as you go along. And
You know
that's
what
what
I-
they do.
you know
They
what I-
make it up.
4,
They're-
5, and 7, they just show up for the glee.
They're also very lazy. They don't do their job.
Like I told
Somebody
you,
else writes the commentary.
I called Ed Kennedy, like I said, last night to talk to him, and I didn't ask him the most important question.
Good
I
old
talked
Ed.
about the high school, I talked about all kinds of things with him. The only thing I didn't ask him is how he voted on that millionaire's tax. There was a big hit for the schools there
Oh,
also.
I'm sure he voted in favor.
Well-
I would be shocked if he didn't.
Did
That-
you ask him on the show?
Yeah.
No, I haven't asked, well, he might be hearing us right now, but
Yeah.
I'm saying is I'd like to know how he voted on that one, because it was the millionaire's tax, if I have this right, and I think it was Eric Gitcher that brought it up at the city council meeting, it raised around $1 billion, and it was supposed to be half for the schools and half for infrastructure or roads or whatever. And
Yeah,
they ended up
They're
giving,
redefining it.
yeah, they ended up giving like twice as much, like 800,000 for the MBTA side of the issues,
I've never seen
and 300,000 the schools.
any of these.
300 million, I'm sorry.
Any of these proposals to raise taxes in this state and then allocate it a certain way, it never works out that way. The money always goes somewhere else, okay?
Well, we saw that, I think it was in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s. I worked on different committees with drug-free schools. Of course, today, I think that some of the stuff is an absolute joke, considering that we have marijuana that is legal, and you have so many other drugs that's coming into the...
Shacking up's legal.
Well, that wasn't the drug-free schools program, and you have an
Well,
awful lot of
It's
other...
just the attitude of the general public today.
And you have a lot of other drugs that are coming into the country, and it doesn't seem as though there's many members of Congress that are concerned about how many drugs are coming across the border and what the influences are with regard to that. But there was a grant that I helped write, and it was dealt with a tax that people voted on for on cigarettes. The money that came in was supposed to go to all of the schools in the form of grants dealing with drug-free schools because it had to do with tobacco use.
And smoking cessation programs.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
And it did-
where did the money actually
And
go?
eventually, all that dried up, and it ended up in the general municipal budgets.
Yes, it did. Yes,
And
it
so,
did.
that's why, when they came up with the
Yep.
millionaire's tax, I said, I really don't care.
That's not going to where they said
I'm
it's
not
going.
voting for it.
No, of course not.
Because the
It's a
other
tax.
thing is that it's kind of like you put the frog in cold water and bring it to a boil. At some point, the frog realizes it's got a problem, but by that time, it's really too late to jump out. And so when you start with the millionaire's piece, eventually they're going to move it down. They're going to keep moving it down, and
Well,
everybody will have to pay more and more
They don't
money.
have to move it down, Evelyn, because inflation will do it for you, okay? I don't think people realize, before 1913, we did not have a federal income tax, okay? So in 1913, it was a constitutional amendment. They had to get it ratified by 75% of the states. And God love Rhode Island, they refused to sign. So move to Rhode Island, folks, they've got the right mentality. But in any case, when the federal income tax first went in to existence, it only applied to people and corporations with profits making over $12,500. Now, the 1913 equivalent, today's equivalent of $12,500 is roughly about $300,000. So when the income tax went into effect, it only applied to people making over $300,000. And it was only like 1.5%. So of course, everybody voted for it because 99.9% of the population wasn't going to be affected. Okay, who pays income tax today?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Pretty
okay?
much.
So, and the reason is because of inflation, because, you know, the dollar is now worth less, and people now drop into the category of where they have to pay the tax.
Comment from the audience.
All right.
I thought the local media's job was just to look pretty and read script.
Well, that's
Pretty
what they're
much.
doing.
The
Pretty
local
much.
media's job is to get their ratings up. They don't care about
And
anything else.
don't
make
you
good
find
money,
it,
too.
not to change the subject, but don't you find it amusing that with regard to that particular statement and your statement, John, is that in spite of them looking pretty and reading the script, their ratings are going down. CNN's
trust
down,
them.
ABC, NBC, and the whole thing
all
because they've
down.
been so bad in the past.
Look at the newspapers, where are they?
And you do have some individual reporters in some of the more liberal news broadcasts that are actually asking some pretty good questions and having some discussions. And they haven't been fired yet. And maybe they just need to have people actually talk like the regular people in the country rather than whatever they think is the liberal left. I think there's some other stuff that we can talk about that I
Well,
had some
I mean,
articles on when
The
John
younger
gets here 'cause it
generation's
applies to schools.
apathy, the younger generation's apathy towards government is a reality. They don't care. They don't care. They
Well,
don't care.
part of the, if we wanted to take a look at that, I would make an assumption that part of the reason that you have less individuals being concerned with what's going on in government is because number one, they take it for granted. They have had no experience with having some kind of a war or a depression. Many of them have never paid a bill. They're not on their own. They're living with their parents. The school system has failed with them understanding civics and what their duties are and patriotism because of all the liberal DEI BS that's out there, that they're filling their heads with, oh, just need to feel good about yourself, and however you feel today, we're gonna work on that, and we're not going to, point to whatever is good and be loyal to the United States of America, but you're loyal to yourself. So it's all about self. And so there's a whole lot of different things as to why there's far more apathy, because there's apathy amongst our group too.
And time. I mean, people, they're so busy just trying to keep their heads above water. Many people, they just don't have time to engage and understand what's going on.
Well, that's the reason why so many younger people than we are, and that's a lot of people, by the way, are not getting involved in politics, is because they either work one or two jobs, they have a family.
Exactly.
They're trying to make ends meet,
They're
or,
too
you know,
tired.
they have the government giving them all kinds of assistance, so why do they want to run for office? There's no reason for that.
So at the local election level, I mean, you look at Lowell and Chelmsford and Bill Ricker and Tingsboro, typically when you have a local election, when it's just the local races on the ballot, you're getting turnouts of 9 to 14%.
Yeah, it's bad.
Okay?
Yeah.
And what people don't grasp, I think, is that you have local, state, and federal elections. The most important to vote in is your local election, because that is what impacts you the most, okay? And people don't see it that way, all right? So
All politics is local, Sam, you know.
I understand that, but, you know, if you live in Chelmsford, when you vote for select board and school committee and planning board, those folks are making decisions that impact you directly as a Chelmsford citizen, okay? And that is really the most important level where you should be engaged in voting, all right? And yet, it's just the opposite. I mean, you get the least number of people because they figure, it's just local, nobody cares. But those, you know, those people you're voting for make decisions that directly impact you
Well,
as
you
a
can see
citizen
that
of the
with
town.
when we, the conversation that we started with, and that was what was going on with the budget
Yeah.
at City Hall in Lowell.
Exactly.
So I don't know what time John is going to get here, but are there any topics that you guys want to talk about other than what he may be talking about in the
Well,
next hour?
what's he going to talk about, do you
Well,
know?
I'm certainly sure it's all the same stuff. I'm going to wait and see whether or not he gets on the bandwagon about the latest thing about the Afghan refugees that the country is telling to go back. I don't agree with that because to me, it's a death sentence. But this country isn't the only one that's doing that. All the refugees that came into Pakistan, they're telling them they have to leave. So it'll be interesting to see where this all goes. So he may bring that up. He's also on the school committee. We can ask him how things are going and what he's doing in negotiations. I mean, there's all the different things in his aspects, and you may come up with questions about what we talked about the first
With
half
refugees,
an hour.
I just always felt that we've been very lucky in the past. Since Vietnam, I think we picked up one of the best populations that we could have got with the Southeast Asian
I
people.
agree with you, Bob.
Yeah.
These people, by and large, mostly, they're very industrious people, they're hard workers, and they become good citizens, or if they don't become citizens, they become good permanent residents.
Yeah.
And they contribute a great deal to the community. There's no question
So then
about
we
it.
could also talk currently, I mean, we've got like, say, 10 minutes left, about the people that are in Newark, New Jersey that are protesting.
The politicians.
Yeah,
That
and
stormed
there's
the
a whole
ICE
lot of other,
office?
yes, the facility that ICE had
Unbelievable.
convicted criminals in. And the question is, why are they doing it under this administration when it was open to do exactly the same thing under the Obama administration? And you had somebody that said, well, it's clean, it's this, it's that, and the reason that we wanted to go in unannounced was so that they couldn't set it up for us, and it appears as though everybody's being taken care of, and the whole thing. And now you have people basically ignoring what this woman had said and making up crap as they go along. But they violated law in obstructing federal officers, and I'm assuming that they have on camera, because I thought that I saw this,
Well, then there should be arrests. if
that
that's true.
there was some of them that pushed around the officers, and I was under the impression that if any of us ever tried to shove a police officer, it was called assault. Not the other way around, in that, oh, you bumped into me, you were in my way, I pushed you out of the way, you're causing me assault. I mean, this is really crazy. And then you have
Rules for thee,
Jeffries.
but not for me.
Jeffries in the in the House, basically saying, well, there's a red line here, and don't bring any convictions against any of the elected officials. Well, they did against Republicans, why can't they against Democrats if they violate the law?
Rules for thee, but not for me.
I just find it really a sad situation where if I'm not in control, I'm going to make your life miserable until I'm back in control. I'm not going to work with you to help the country. I'm not going to work with you to help the people in the country. I'm just going to make everybody's life miserable because I didn't get my own way in the last election. It's like an unruly child. It's kind of like, can we slap them down
Well,
a
that's
little?
where we are, and it's been that way for a long time.
And then they had the thing with the airport in Newark also, so you have a mayor and you have different ones, and they're not even trying to figure out how to help it. Civics should be mandatory in all schools at every level instead of the TEI baloney. Well, I agree with that.
Well, the city of Boston right now is trying to push through ranked choice voting.
I saw that this morning.
I
Big
think that's
mistake.
stupid.
Big mistake.
It wasn't in the state of Alaska.
Big mistake.
Big numbers I've seen recently that I want to see
Big
more of. I don't know all the results yet, but they said death by fentanyl is way down. And that's great to hear.
I would
that.
say those- if you
Well,
have
that's just recently, that's
If you
what I
have less
said.
fentanyl coming in, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So,
it does.
yeah.
Yes, but it's here.
I get
yeah.
that.
Fentanyl is here already.
Right. And
Yeah.
people are addicted, so that's the problem.
Well, I don't know. We have a whole, like I said, I'm not sure if John's here, and we can certainly talk about all of this kind of stuff and get his perspective on it. I know that there were different comments made on Facebook that I don't agree with, but I don't think I want to hash it out on this program.
Don't talk about Facebook.
And, you know.
What a
it-
waste of time that is.
Well, I read a lot of the stuff, and I will share. I do not put my comments out there because I don't want to have all the name calling happen. We don't deal with what the facts are of the conversation. I did respond to someone that had posted something that was untrue.
Oh, you see
If
that all the
something-
time.
Well, I actually posted this, and I had different articles, and I said, well, if it's a lie, to me an untruth is a lie, why aren't you taking it down? The response was, well, it may have been a mistake, it wasn't a lie, but it's still worth discussing.
An untruth,
An untruth is worth discussing.
a lie is always an untruth, but an untruth is not always a lie. No, lie,
Semantics.
the legal definition of lie is intentional, okay? So if you say something that's untrue, but you think it is true, that's not a lie, because you have not intentionally tried to deceive somebody. That's the legal definition.
Yes,
of a
but
lie.
when you're shown that it's not true,
That's different.
and then you say, well, it was just a mistake, but we're going to leave it up because,
Right.
it's worth discussing the
But
mistake.
you have to be awful careful before calling somebody a liar, because when they say an untruth, they may actually believe that it is true. And if that's the case, they're not lying, okay? So again, a lie is the telling intentionally to deceive. That's the definition of lie, okay?
Right, but the post wasn't the person, it was a post from another post.
Right.
So it was that person's post, and where it was stated, and then you have all of the articles
Well-
that show that the untruth is a lie, and then you point out to the person that's posting this is an untruth, it's a lie, in terms of the fact that now that we know what the truth is, this can't be the truth.
Did the person know that it was untrue when they were saying it?
They didn't care.
But that's the standard.
But the statement was they didn't care whether it was or it
No,
wasn't.
I get it.
You know, one of the, that's why I keep saying how much I love coming on with people from Chelmsford. I remember not long ago, you got Jay Lang in here, I think it was almost 2 years ago, and he said a lot of schools are going to have money problems coming up
Right.
year 25
He
and
was right.
26. Well, and then I said to Sam before the show started, I said, Sam, think of this, I have 7 years history on the Lowell School Committee. I've worked for 4 mayors and 4 superintendents of schools
Unbelievable.
in 7 years. That there is an issue.
So
And,
my question is, who would want to become a superintendent in the city of Lowell?
But
You got a 2-year tenure maybe at best?
why I love local politics is our mayor, Dan Rourke, I got to give him all the credit in the world. The first thing he did when he became mayor was threw a motion out there to hire Liam Skinner, because you know how he's on the school side of things, and they did right away. And it gave Lowell the 1,400 teachers, 500 paras, all these people, you have a career ladder in Lowell now.
And he was an internal.
Yeah, what's
He was an
wrong?
internal candidate. He
Right.
was already in the system.
One of the best principals we had in my lifetime, that's for sure, a great principal. And now you've seen him Tuesday.
How
Liam,
long has he been?
Nice job.
How long has he had
I'm
the job?
guessing at that too, about 3 years. 3
Well,
years.
then he's beat the
Yeah,
average
yeah.
anyway. Right.
You know what I hear from the staff that talk to me anyways, and the staff, like, let's say a principal, they say to me, you know what, Bob, he's letting us do our job.
Most what he's supposed to
Really?
do.
Really, you know?
Well, he knows how
It's
it
a
works
nice
because
thing to hear.
he's been in the system. So he knows how the system works. When you have a brand-new person that comes in, they need to figure out how the system works. It's not that one size fits all. A suburban is different than urban. Vocational is different than regional. The basic education is all exactly the same, but the people in the community and the income, I mean, there's a whole lot, and a lot of factors. We talked about the diversity, we talked about a whole pile of things. It's all a little bit different, and you need someone that knows how to navigate whatever the system is that they're elected to. I mean, I used to joke with some of the Lowell School Committee members when I'd see them down the Cape, or if we were on some committees together, state committees together, about, well, my thing is if you want a stepping stone to become a superintendent someplace else, go to Lowell for 2 years. And they'll get rid of you, and you've got some experience being a superintendent, now you get more money someplace else.
You can do Lowell, you can do any town, right?
Well, that's about where it was.
That's
but-
the way I used to feel about Bill Ricker, when we were looking at town managers. Well, there's a guy if he can do Bill Ricker, he can certainly do Chelmsford easily, right?
I used to love to listen to Evelyn talk about that foundation budget, and then you come back saying how Westford gets taken care of better than you do.
Yeah,
in
but that's
Chelmsford.
because of the way that formula worked in
Right.
terms of the growth
The formula
factor.
is completely outdated. It may have been okay when it first went in 33 years ago, but it's outdated.
And we appreciate your help. Lowell does appreciate what you do for
Oh,
us.
yeah, we give you money. Until the
We-
courts
we
hold these people
appreciate
Sam, you want
accountable.
to read these, please?
Until the
Okay, so
courts
much
hold
for
these
Neil
people
reading.
accountable for their actions, it's going to continue to happen. Now, what are we talking about there? What's that in reference to?
Page 2.
I thought Facebook in the beginning was geared towards kids. Now it's been hijacked by the adults.
I didn't think Facebook was for
No,
kids.
I
I
didn't
thought it
think-
was for adults.
It was for kids.
But it wasn't,
was?
I don't,
Yeah,
To
TikTok.
do what?
TikTok has the kids.
Yeah, that's
and
bad.
Instagram has the kids.
Yeah.
I would
that's
like the
true.
government to take it over and get rid of some of the stuff that's on it. It's really, really bad.
I like it.
censorship.
You like all this stuff on,
I
all of
like
it?
it. Say what you want. Snopes is out there. As soon as you put something out there
Oh,
that's
then
a
you're
little
talking about something different.
wrong, people, that's not right, that's not right, that's, go to Snopes, whatever.
Yeah, but Snopes is also can be wrong.
Yes.
So there are other things, so I don't go to Snopes. If I want to
Where do
prove,
you go?
what I do is I ask my telephone whatever the question is. I take a
And
look.
so your
You
phone
asked
tells you.
me, so I take a look at whatever the articles are that have been written by liberal media that will support my position. In other words, if it's factual, it's hard to get away from it regardless of what the perspective is where you're coming from. Because this is Massachusetts, it's fairly liberal. If you try to put anything up there from Fox News or some other conservative agency or organization, you get knocked for the fact that, oh, you're this, you're that. But if you put up liberal, which is what I did on this other issue, I found the liberal sources that said that it was incorrect, and I put it up there. I've done it before, and all of a sudden, all the comments will stop. Because they're reading it and they can't argue against whatever that was because it's liberal. So, and if I can't find it, I don't put anything up.
So we got 3 minutes, then we're gonna go to break. John
is-
Moses is here.
Yep.
Go
So,
ahead, John.
John is going to join us a little bit after 7. We're
That's
going to
good.
take a break for a minute and a half maybe or something like
Oh,
that.
don't forget the announcements, Evelyn.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a lot of announcements this morning at 7:20?
I have 5 minutes worth.
Oh, boy,
In fact,
that'll be
Mark
good.
Kratman just sent me one about
Good
the
time to have
Memorial
a
Day
coffee.
parade coming up, all the festivities happening in Oz. So,
Parade? Who's having a parade?
they have, Tewksbury has a parade every Memorial Day.
Oh,
Well,
they- oh,
Chelmsford
yeah,
does
yeah,
too.
we do too, yeah.
A small one.
Small one.
Oh, Tewksbury's gigantic.
Get ready for the humidity coming in.
It's going to be in the center this year.
And then one of the things that I had said a while ago, my mother is in a long-term care facility, and this particular facility is in Littleton, and they will be having a concert in June.
What
So
instrument does your mother play?
she plays the piano, but she's not going to be
Okay,
playing the
all right.
concert. She
Well,
just
why
turned
not?
because she's not going to do that. She doesn't. Never mind. There's a long discussion with regard to that particular thing. She can.
Just asked you to get
Even
your
at
vote.
104, she can. She's a lot better than most of the people that are there that are a lot younger than she is. It's kind of an interesting situation. However, I did ask some of the people that are in the administration aspect of it if they'd like to be on City Life to discuss the programs that they have
think we
that
should
are
have your
available
mother
to the
on.
public and the fundraisers. No, and the different things that they have. So the answer was yes, because there'll be a fundraiser for their Alzheimer's group. They have programs and things, and there's a lot of that out there today. So I've been asking, a variety of different people to be able to be on.
Littleton?
And so I said, maybe we contact Littleton LTC and see whether or not they would like to have us on their programming in the morning, and we'll see where that goes. Can't hurt. We're going to take a break.
I'm going to tell you a little story during the break. We'll be back.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care. We'll be back. Don't leave us.
Coffee time.
Welcome back to City Life. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I am your host for the next approximate 57 plus seconds minutes this morning. And my co-hosts Sam Chase and Bob Hoey are with me this morning. We all can be our own hosts, which is what I talked about in the first hour. So it's always interesting, even though we do have somebody that tries to run things. We are an unscripted show. Our opinions are our own. They may be somebody else's, but they are not the opinions of John McDonough necessarily, or any of the LTCs of any of those communities that are down there. And we're never quite sure what we're going to talk about.
They're usually the opinions of those speaking.
That's what I said. There are our opinions, or there's somebody else's. Anyway, so we have John Moses, our guest this morning. Thank you very much for getting up extra special early for us. John is a member of the Chelmsford School Committee. Now, how many terms?
I'm on my
Fourth.
fourth term, yeah, thank you, fourth term, yeah. You start to lose count after.
Yes, you do.
No, I was just reelected recently at the same time as Maria Santos, which was a really great choice, I think, for the town.
She's on her third, right?
She's on her third,
Yeah.
and I think we're going to need an experienced school committee over the next few years. I think there are different views from the federal side about what education should be and what should be paid for, and we're preparing for a lot of that, preparing for the schools. But generally, I do appreciate all the people in Chelmsford that voted me and wanted to say thank you again.
Yeah, because I don't think that you had that opportunity since the election. And we wanted to make sure that you had that opportunity. Now, I know that Chelmsford is in negotiations with your unions, and you're on several
Yes.
of those committees on behalf of the school system. So can you kind of tell us what the unions are, what your status is?
Yeah.
I know that it's executive session, so there's a lot of stuff you can't share, but whatever you can share,
Can I
it's great.
interrupt for 1 second?
Go right ahead.
That's good, and I hope you do that, but could you also, before you do that, take a minute to explain to the audience how that process works? Because I don't think people generally understand that the
Yeah.
school committee itself is the part of the bargaining process. So if you could just
Yeah.
generally describe that, and then answer Evelyn's questions.
Yeah, that falls really squarely under the, that kind of responsibility of budget, of hiring and firing, and big contracts like that require taxpayer input, which is your elected officials. But essentially, after 3 years, at one point, it's usually initiated by the union. They'll come to us and say, hey, we're ready to negotiate. These negotiations, to be fair to both parties, are kept in executive session, so essentially closed door. We do provide notes on what happened. So when you talk about things like negotiating or, labor agreements, it's always done in private, and you always have those discussions in private and not on TV. I will say, and then so they go through the process, they start negotiating, you go back and forth. Generally, depending on the difficulty of the contract, it takes a few months. But if you have a good contract, the really good thing that people should know is, and we get this a lot, like, how could you give them this contract or whatever, and we've given good contracts. But they'll say essentially things like, why did they get that contract? And you say, well, the school committee votes on it on behalf of the taxpayer, right? So we vote for it, and then it goes back to the union, and they vote for it. So whenever you see a union contract, it's been agreed to by both parties, and they've both said it's fair. So everything after that is, whatever.
And the point, I think that, the reason I wanted you to explain that is contrary to how it's done on the municipal side, the school committee, the 5-member school committee actually participates and does do the negotiating, whereas on the municipal side, with municipal employee contracts, the select board does not do that.
That's
interesting.
interesting.
It's the town manager, okay? So that's the difference, and that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
No, we actively negotiate. We speak, especially once you've been, not the first contract, I probably didn't say anything, but I had much more experienced people with me, right? And now I'm the longest serving person, so I go in and I speak.
now they can't shut you up.
Now they can't. Yeah. No, and I do want to say, just generally speaking, the unions in Chelmsford have been really good to us. They were good through us through back in the day during COVID. Their representatives have been very respectful to us, and we expect that we'll have a good negotiation and kind of signing in the next few months. I'm really positive about it. Again, they're really good people, and I've known a lot of the union members now for 9 years. So
Who is the union steward now on the
it's
school side?
Katie Sullivan.
Katie Sullivan,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, she works her tail off. She's a good teacher. She's in high school, outside of all the union stuff, and then she's a good union person that represents her people well. And that's a hard job too.
it's
That's probably
ridiculous.
harder than school committee because
Yeah.
they have a whole constituency that they have to work with, and teachers aren't quiet. So
And they all have different opinions on how
They do.
things ought to be done. So you're right, that's a very difficult position.
yeah, they do.
I always found it very difficult because we were only given so much money.
Yeah.
And you had to spread it. It wasn't just in their wages, because we had professional development, they had other types of things that they needed. Maybe they wanted some sick time, they wanted the buyback. I mean, in longevity, we got rid of that. We got rid of an
Thank you.
awful lot of things because
Yes.
we needed to do that because it was affecting future budgets, and it was really not a good take at
We
the
still
time.
talk about longevity and how it got taken out, and people want it back, and we're like, we didn't spend decades, like Evelyn Thoren didn't spend a decade negotiating it out to get it back in. So no, I absolutely understand those things, and that's the thing people in towns don't know about. When you get elected, you could end up in a bad contract. You could be elected into a contract that's really bad. Like Lowell's had contract problems in the past. Those things are tough, and you can walk in as your first year and be like, you're dealing with an emergency now. So,
I was from a big union, about 5,000 members.
Yeah.
We worked under the governor's branch, the executive branch of government, and a lot of power when you have that many members. But we were run by ASME at one time in the 70s, late 70s. Then we had a strike at Concord Prison. It was such a stronghold of a union. It was ASME, and we got a lot of great things from ASME.
yeah.
But then we became our own union. It's called MCUFU. I don't know what it stands for, MCU. I never liked it. I didn't even want to pay my dues. I didn't like it. And I just retired. But in law school committee, you had Paul Georges and Mike Earl type of guys. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better than having a guy like, he's near the end of his career, but
Yeah.
Paul Georges, the way he talked about teachers, it would almost make me melt like butter.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? It was just, so it's not an easy job. But we also had a guy like second in charge right now, a lawyer, right? And he's the best. To me, I would go to him. Jim Hall's his name, and I went to him over a lot of issues when I didn't, you didn't realize how you want to vote, and you'd sit with him, and he'd give you all kinds of time and just give you his opinion on the way things are. So you have Jay Lang, which is a good thing to have, right?
Yep.
When it comes to budgets. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, we have Jay Lang, we've had a stable lawyer for a long time. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, a stable district, really, if you have a superintendent that has lasted that long and is doing a good job, it's really rare. He's one of the most senior superintendents in Massachusetts now. He's also got political connections within the superintendent communities. I think he plans on retiring after, so for Dr. Lang, he can retire in a few years. He won't even be anywhere near the retirement age, and he can go on to help other districts kind of as a private citizen. So,
Or he can be an interim
or
superintendent.
interim superintendent, someone that needs financial work. I just think that when you hire good superintendents, their value shows evidence over time. And the longer I've been with him, the more impressed I am that he's able to do all that work.
We haven't asked him whether or not he's going to retire when he can retire.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't.
Sometimes.
Because we have, next week we'll have Bill Olson, who was the superintendent of schools in Westford, and he was there for decades. He's coming in because of the Ledge Road thing, but I also want to discuss stuff because I read an article that said he was the interim superintendent in Merrimack, New Hampshire, to see the comparison in education between the two states. So trying to keep with that educational theme, besides all of the political stuff that we seem to get ourselves involved in with regard to that. But I mean, one of the things that we also tried to negotiate out of the administrator's contract and the teacher contract had to do with retirement benefits. And so we grandfathered everybody in, but I've been out long enough that it would be interesting to see exactly how many people are left.
I think there's some left. I actually
Because
do.
when
Yeah.
we would have a hit, because there was something with the state that wanted people to retire so that you could hire a lot of newer people, saying, well, your budget will go down because of the salary issue, except for one thing, that when we had that retirement benefit that was in there, we were paying
25%, wasn't it?
anywhere between 100 and one year I thought it was like $500,000 that had to come out of the budget because that was in payment because it was like 30
Yeah.
people that retired.
My wife got it when she retired
Yeah.
10 years ago. She got the, I think it was 25%.
Yeah, it was an
Yeah,
extra
it was.
amount, and
That's
we got rid
crazy.
of that. They didn't like that, and then I do remember, and I just love the particular moment when we sat down with the administrators, and they said, well, we want what the teachers have. I said, you do? Oh. So then I started listing all this stuff, and they said, all right, we'll start over. Because they didn't
Evelyn-
want that.
Evelyn let me say quite a bit on the first hour before you came, John.
I
And-
didn't let you say
Oh, you
stuff.
did, no, Lowell
You said
has,
stuff
Lowell
'cause you
just had a
wanted
big meeting, Tuesday city council
Yeah.
meeting was unbelievable, and it was all about schools. And what you have in Chenstead, what I see sitting here with these two folks, is Paul Cohen's a big part of your system also, the way him and Jay Lang get along. Well, I seen that Tuesday night in Lowell for the first time in my lifetime, that the city manager and the superintendent of schools, there's something was clicking in a good way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what we need in Lowell. When I tell you, I had 4 superintendents, that story I tell you all the time. 4 superintendents with 4 mayors in 7 years. It was an issue. It's a big issue.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's
How do you-
over.
how do
That's
you-
how I felt the other night. It's
Yeah, and
over.
how do you build out like a long-term strategy if you're changing if your superintendents are leaving or, the city manager's leaving or, that's a big part of having somebody, and even having a committee that is interested in being on a long time, is all these relationships are built, and you figure out how that superintendent works as a school committee member. So there are things I know how to work with Jay, because I've worked with him for a long time. And that doesn't benefit the students or the teachers or the school committee who gets put in a position where you're constantly having to shift, okay, well, now their priorities are this or this, and maybe this person has one personality flaw that I can't stand and the next person doesn't. Like, it just really, having stable boards and superintendents is good for schools.
I think what we seen Tuesday night in Lowell, we're on the right road
Good,
right now,
good,
so that's good.
I went to Lowell schools. I grew up in Lowell. I went to the old Varnum, which is now apartments. I went to the Robinson, and then I ended up in the old McAvenue in Pawtuckaville, the Wang. I was one of the
Yeah.
first students in the Wang, and then I went to Greater Lowell. So I've been in Lowell. I was in Lowell my whole life. I think those schools deserve better, or the best, really.
So what is the status currently of where you are with negotiations? Are you near the end? Do you think you're going into mediation?
No, I don't think we've gotten anywhere near there yet. We've had several good meetings without giving the details. We've had several positive meetings. We're still kind of in exchanging state right now, right? They're telling us the things they want. We're telling things. We go back and forth. We agree on some of them. We don't agree on others, and we start talking. We're like really right.
They're in the initial stages.
Yeah, we're like in the 3rd or 4th meeting, so we're not at money yet. We're not any of the really. We'll get there. We're getting ready. There's a whole process to it.
And when
but,
does the current contract expire?
that's a great question. Off the top of my head, it's this year. I just don't remember the date.
So you're ahead of the process.
Yeah, we're always.
Okay.
Well,
Jay
usually it'll
keeps
be
us ahead. Yeah,
June 30th.
Yeah, I
Because it
think
goes
it's
by
June.
fiscal year.
yeah, I think it's June 30th.
Right, and sometimes it doesn't get settled by that point in time because that's only a month
Oh, it can be
away.
2-3 years out?
You could be, but
Yeah.
we normally aren't. I think that.
No, which is
There
good.
was one time where we were 2 years out, I think it was.
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, it's
And that's unique. I don't need to talk about the details of that. But we were in mediation. And everybody at that point, I thought, was relatively new. It was the last one I think I worked on, except for me and the lawyer, or the mediator, I should say, that was there. And it was an interesting exchange, let's put it that way. I rather enjoyed it. I think I missed my calling. I should have been a lawyer, but it was a lot of fun, considering I like to write policy, procedure. I was into whatever they were doing and the wording and.
You certainly
and
were.
Word of. And that,
Unbelievable.
some of that stuff I miss and some of it I don't miss because I've filled my life with other things. All right, so those are the negotiations. So what about the budget? Now, we did pass a budget at town meeting. There are some things that you're going to have to reduce, but you're going to have to reduce some stuff in future years. Have you started to discuss
Yeah.
any of that?
Yeah, we have. I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I think the big thing we're looking at, so it's about $1.2 or $3 million short this year compared to where we normally are, and we have found places to do that. We've, some things we could turn off, right? So it's easy. So I really want to get those pickleball courts done over by the police station in the McCarthy. Well, that's not going to happen this year, right? We don't have the money for that. So we're looking for ways to do that don't impact students or services, right? So you always got to make decisions about the money. We're also making decisions if there's changes in federal money. So we've gone through and identified anything federally funded. Big budgets.
Exactly.
Well, we could talk about food, but he hasn't put up whatever it is
But if
that
you're
I
on a
made.
budget, you're probably
Oh,
eating meatloaf.
So everybody knows the food today at the pantry is meatloaf with gravy.
Right.
It's like $3. I've been here. I've done this a few times.
And if you don't have the money, you eat for free.
You eat for free.
There you go.
You know, John, I got a gentleman coming on the show in another maybe week,
Yeah.
2 weeks tops, Dave Aldridge. He runs, with my sister, they run that Project
Yeah,
Compass.
yeah.
They're gonna start construction on the building right next to the Hafner's gas station down here on Appleton Street.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's starting. He's got a builder. They're ready to go to work. And the area, you know, if you're from Lowell, it needs a lot of work in
Yeah,
that whole
yeah.
area. But how's your nonprofit going?
Good.
How's everything going?
It's good. We've definitely, so if anybody that's watched before, and you guys know, but essentially, I created a nonprofit to help Afghan allies come to the United States and resettle. With the administration change, resettlement of Afghans has really stopped, or it's become really self-funded. It's become difficult. So we've kind of refocused on a few things. So the first thing we try to do is we try to do events for Afghans in like Southwest Asian, so think like Iranian or any of the stands over there by the Persian Gulf. But we want to do, so we do events. We have people come in, they eat, they sing. We try to make them feel welcome. We're going to be adding some components to that, so people that need services can come in and they can be connected with somebody like a Project Compass or another thing related to immigrants. But it's been a difficult few months. I think they just announced yesterday or Monday. It was Monday. They just announced they're removing temporary protected status from about 15,000 Afghans. And for a lot of them that haven't made it far enough in the process, they are saying they want to send them back to Afghanistan because it's apparently they've deemed it to be safe, and it's not safe.
It's not safe.
And so the other part of that is outside of Mass Afghan, which is doing local support, getting people together, getting neighbors to meet Afghans and all these other people so they actually know who they are. But I'm still supporting a family. We have a man in Pakistan who's married to an American woman. We've been trying to get out for months, and we're really close on him. And then I had finally had to move one of my interpreter families in Kabul. This is personal again. I don't do this through the org, but essentially to pay for a new safe house. So to really try to get him through the next 4 years. So we've put this gentleman, he's a special immigrant. He was an interpreter. We got him into a house, safe house, so we're paying all the rent and everything. Plus we found a way to get education for his kids through like a tablet in Afghanistan. So they're in hiding, they don't come out. No, it's a tough spot to be in an immigrant, to found an immigration nonprofit and then have immigration change the way it has been it's been tough. But we're doing the work we can, and like John says, you do the work, you just keep putting away and you keep pushing and try to find new solutions. The biggest challenge we have is keeping people from being afraid. So there's an Afghan American person, I don't want to name who they are or any of that. They're Afghan American. They got their American citizenship about 6 months ago. They carry their passport around now because they're like, if we run into ICE, they're not very discriminatory about who they pick up. And so now we have Afghans that are supposed to be here that are scared. So we do a lot of work around making sure they know their rights, what they can say, hey, if they ask you questions, this is all you have to say. So that's it. We're trying to keep Afghans safe here in America. I'm surprised by how fast some of my neighbors have turned on the Afghans. These are the same people in my community that were like, oh, I support you, I support veterans, I have a bumper sticker on my car.
I have a problem with that. I really do have a problem.
What's the matter with people?
With people not supporting those that supported us. Now, Pakistan is also trying to get rid of their Afghan refugees.
Yeah.
So for whoever it is that's in Pakistan that you're trying to get out of that area, that may be a lot simpler than you think it may be, just as a result of what they're doing. But I don't particularly like this particular direction. In some cases, I'm very much supportive of certain things, but I'm selective in what I support and what I don't. I don't do a blanket.
One size does not fit all.
That's
Okay.
correct. And so I like to know what the details are before I say I like it or I don't like it.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people I know that fall into that category, even though some people may think that they don't.
I'm not a big fan of Pakistan, though.
Pakistan's brutal. I've been moving people through Pakistan for 3.5 years now, and they are cruel to people.
Oh,
They have their own agenda, and now that they're fighting with India, right? I don't even think people realize that we have a lot of Indian Americans that have family out there, and now they're in war in Pakistan, and I agree. Pakistan is tough. They're a pay-by-play. You can get things done with bribes, and it's actually kind of encouraged.
And they're a nuclear power.
So, to your point, the person we're waiting to get out, we're just waiting on his American visa. So as soon as he gets an American visa, so these were all things that America used to pay for, though. So if you were an American citizen and you brought your person, right, America would help pay for the visas. They would waive all the fees. They'd pay for your flights, to get you here and all that stuff. The flights you always had to pay back. It was a loan, but there was a way to get people here, and the government has now shut down all money. So we're going to have to raise the funds to fly that one. It won't be bad. It won't be expensive. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you got it. Here we go.
I'm going to do my announcements.
Here we go,
and,
5 minutes.
Are we
I'm
off?
shutting your mics off. They can hear, if you talk loud enough, they can certainly hear you. So, they can't hear you in the background. Okay, so today is the 15th. And so if you go over to Lowell Senior Center around 10:30, get yourself a ticket to eat. And today you're going to have meatloaf with mashed potatoes. So that's a delicious meal. I've had that several times. Nice to have. While we have out in Chelmsford today, spaghetti with chicken, meatballs, marinara, green beans, and margarine. I don't know what margarine is, but that's very yummy too. And all meals include milk, bread, margarine. The menu is subject to change without notice. Suggest donation $2.50 a meal. So it's 50 cents more in Chelmsford if you head out there. And I'm going to guess if you don't have the money, you can eat there for free, but I don't know. You said that's true, Sam? So if you don't have the money, you can eat in Chelmsford for free too. Today is Rodney Elliott's birthday. No, it's not, but he's having a party tonight at a China Star restaurant, 1733 Middlesex Street. Hope to see you out there. Good time to be had by y'all. Good guy. If you're cleaning out your house, you got a lot of gently used clothes, bed linens, towels, whatever you want to get rid of, bring them over to St. Michael's Church, and they'll be happy to find a new home for them. If you want to take your fancy phone over the TV set and take a picture of this, all the better. And a lot of good information on this. This is coming up Saturday. This guy's a talk master in Boston. And Jeff Kuna. When I'm in the car, I enjoy listening to the guy. And he's having this big rally that to help the legislature get audited like the people voted for. So people voted for it. The legislature's just saying, tough, bad stuff. So Vesna Noon, he's having a fundraiser at the Sampaio Mies restaurant, May 24th, 7 p.m. to midnight. Always a tasty time, $50 a ticket. If you want to go, they have some phone numbers down here. You got to make an RSVP. So please be in touch if you want to go to Vesna's party. Neighborhood meetings. There's a neighborhood meeting tonight. Back Central, I'm going to hope to go to that meeting tonight. These are all of the neighborhood meetings that the Lowell Police Department is aware of. You have a neighborhood group and you want to be put on this list, just call the cops and tell them. They'll be happy to put you on there. But tonight is Back Central Neighborhood Association meeting, so I'm hoping to be over that. I'm going to go to Roddy's party first, then I'm going to scoot to the neighborhood meeting. So hope to see you there tonight. Tewksbury Memorial Day Parade. It's going to be May 26th, and all kinds of things going on there. 2025 Memorial Day ceremony starts at 10, and the parade is at 11. So hope to see you over there. Thank you. And healing mass for St. Pettigreen. He's the patron saint of cancer saints. If you know somebody who's afflicted with cancer and you'd like to go to this mass, everybody's welcome to go on May 28th at the Immaculate Conception Church, 144 East Merrimack Street in lovely Lowell, Massachusetts. Beautiful church. Campaign fundraiser for a guy by the name of Dan Finn, Bobby Hoey's candidate. And he's having a party on Thursday, May 29th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Cobblestones in downtown Lowell. Only $10 to get in. Corey Robinson, he's having a party. He's having a party at the Dompolsky Club, Friday, May 30th, 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. Hope to see you over there. And if you need to pray for somebody, these gals are fantastic. They have like a direct line to God, so just give them a call. And they help me out plenty of times. Whenever I have any troubles, I just call them. And these girls are great. The Monastery of St. Clair, the Poor Clare nuns, their phone number's down there. Just leave them a voicemail. Very good stuff. Evelyn has a guy coming to talk about these rumbling trucks in Chelmsford. I think his name is Everett Olson. He's coming to, I think, next week? Next Thursday. And school is going to be ending pretty soon, so pretty soon traffic will calm down, but you have all the kids being at home. Tewksbury put this on one of their pages. They're bragging that they're getting out June 17th. But all the kids are getting out pretty soon. And that is my last one. Back over to you, Evelyn. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, well, welcome back to City Life. We have about a half an hour left, or less. And so we were talking about a whole pile of different things dealing with schools. We got a little bit more off on your nonprofit.
nonprofit,
Do you have
yeah.
more, anything to add to that?
Just if anybody's interested in helping a veteran, this is kind of one of the things. So we're still supporting families locally, and I'm a veteran, grew up in Lowell, mobilized out of Lowell, lived in Chelmsford now for quite some time. But massafghanalliance.org/donate. Most of our volunteers are veterans of Afghanistan or Afghans. So we actually built an organization, built kind of balanced because we wanted to bring Afghans to you. So massafghanalliance.org/donate. Any amount of donation helps. Those rents that I pay overseas, all those things, we need help all the time.
I really enjoy when Maria Santos comes on
Yeah.
the show.
She helps me a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say that she must be able to give you a lot of tips on how to help the immigrants, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole Afghanistan thing happened so fast. A lot of it wasn't, written into, wasn't codified into law yet. Like they were building all that stuff kind of while it was working. So Maria would help me with the law stuff, and I would help her with the process stuff because it was changing so fast, and I was always in the process of helping Afghans. That it was really interesting to go to a lawyer's office and be like, hey, look at all these things I learned, and she's like, oh my God, I didn't know any of this yet. And you're like, it's been an interesting few years. I didn't expect to learn about immigration, but I still love working with Afghans. I still think they're part of our mission, and I'm glad they're here.
Well,
when they
as I said, I think that you have certain individuals that will help us on the front lines and behind the lines, and we need to support them just as much as they supported us. And, it's a question of vetting and making sure that those that are coming over are the ones that were helping us, and you pretty much know many of them. So, now you have a website.
Yep.
So, John, if you put the website up, the name of it is?
massafghanalliance.org.
So he's going to put that up, and then everybody can see what that is, and there's, that way then you have access to, if you want to support it, or if you want to ask questions of it, or know exactly what's going on, and it's legal, it's a 501c3
Yep.
organization.
Tax deductible.
Yes.
Yep, tax
And so there's a lot with regard to that. And again, as with many things that's currently happening with the federal government, there's a lot of things that may be going away that will now have to become privately supported. So that I guess it's the only way that you can reduce large government.
There they are. I forget those young ladies' name, but they were fun. So yeah, this is the Mass Afghan website. If you go up, you'll see the logo. So the logo is actually really important. That logo is a Lowell-based logo. I wanted Mass Afghan. We're kind of headquartered out of this area. So on the logo on the top left there, you'll see the Merrimack River and, one of the representative bridges and mills. But Mass Afghan, Lowell's in the heart of that. Chelmsford too, this whole area. So that logo is very local to these people. So, and my job for a long time was bringing them to Massachusetts. So if you go over to events or news, you can kind of see photos and what it's like. But they're generally really fun. They're peaceful. People drink tea and they eat and have fun. And we're going to continue to add services to that going forward and think of new ideas and new ways to help.
So, John, under contact, if you can, and
website.
donate,
Thank you.
is there more to any of what you've got here? Okay, so if you want to make a donation,
Yep.
All you have to do is click on that. You can do that online.
Volunteers. We have
And
a ton
then-
of volunteers, yeah.
Yep, and there's all kinds of ways in which to be involved in this particular organization.
Yeah.
Again, they were allies and extreme help to Americans that were in the country because they wanted their freedom too. Unfortunately, a lot of it was for naught in comparison to what happened in the last administration, which we don't need to talk about the politics of it. It was a sad situation, I think, in terms of what that was, and certainly did not agree with that. So we've talked about schools. Is there anything else that's going on within the school system that you're aware of?
No, the schools are doing well. My kids are in the school. My daughter's in high school. She's doing great. And I get to watch all these programs she gets to be a part of. I'm a high school parent now. And my son is 11. He turned 11 last week, and he's as smart as a whip too.
What
And
school does he go to?
He goes to Parker. He goes to Parker.
Oh, so he's there with my granddaughter.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk more in a minute.
Yeah.
But
They
may know each other.
I have a grandson coming out of towns and going in Neshoba. How's that place going?
Neshoba's great. I love Superintendent Pigeon.
Oh,
I-
she's fantastic.
She's phenomenal. They have a smaller budget to work with, also a smaller school set and all that, but a much different varied audience, especially when you're on one of the school committee there for them.
8 towns.
8 towns they represent. I love vocational school, and it's not like my dad's vocational school where like,
No, God, no.
no, but like my dad was like, he went to the trade school, right?
You
And
went
you're-
to Greater Lowell, right?
I went to Greater Lowell, so my dad went to the trade school, and then, they all went the old school way, right? Plumbing, this, that.
trades.
By the time I got to high school, they had things like computer programming. I mean, it was still pretty basic. Information technologies had just started. That's what I ended up taking.
In your father's time, how many people from the Voc actually went on to college?
Almost none.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't designed for that originally.
Now it's common.
Now it's common.
Well, that's
You-
because of the Ed Reform Act of 93, and it mandated, because everybody had to take MCAS, it mandated all of the academics.
Right,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
they had to revise everything in every one of those vocational schools to meet the
But
academic
that's
requirement.
a good thing, because you come out of a vocational school.
So
and-
trained.
And you talk about well-rounded.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, it was a stigma if you
Yeah.
went to vocational school. I
The
mean,
Vokies, right?
Yeah, the dummies went there.
Yeah.
And
It's
that
not
wasn't,
true.
by the way, that was not true then,
It's never been true.
and it's certainly not true now.
Last
Okay.
night they had the Greater Lowell Technical High School had like an acceptance night for all the new ones coming in, all the new students.
yeah.
They all showed up there. I know they had the place all spick and span for them, and their freshmen coming in. They had the meeting last night for the new people.
I love it. I think people often say like, oh, we don't have, all we have is public school. Well, in Massachusetts, we have a great vocational set of schools. There are
Yes.
private schools, there's tons of schools. But I think most importantly, like you said, now these kids are going in there, coming out with a career and a college degree. They're going into college with college. I think Greater Lowell does college credits now. People are expected to go to the Greater Lowell, learn a vocation, and potentially go to college. It's not only an open option, it's encouraged, which is a big difference from when like most of us went to school.
Right.
Yeah, like Lowell could use another school.
Yeah.
Just one more trade. We
Yeah.
got 3,200 kids and
Yeah.
at least 1,000 of them need a trade school.
Yeah.
But there's only 78 on a waiting list, they'll say, approximate numbers. People don't even apply because they know their child's had discipline problems or doesn't show up for school. And why wouldn't you? And that's when I used to say they cherry pick, but I know that was just to crank some people up. But why wouldn't you want the better student? And that's
Yeah.
what they're attracting. They're attracting the ones that are gonna go to college.
It's competitive now.
It
Right,
is
well, the
it is an
statute-
admissions process, yes.
Right, but in the
that's true.
statute, they do have discrimination on who they accept and they don't in a vocational school. And that's in the law, that they can do that, whereas in a public school, you can't say,
You have
I
to
don't want
take
your
everything.
kid.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you want to take a look at that. At least it was when I was on the school committee, because I
That's
was
the way
shocked
it
when I
is.
read that. I was like, okay. Because I had people pushing back on me, and I'm going, well, I'm not on that particular school
I
committee,
think
so I
that
can't do
discussion
anything
got
about it.
started with the charter schools.
could have.
Because that was the complaint for the charter schools, that they did not have to take everybody.
Yeah, then they fixed that, but my thing with charter schools has always been the funding, the way they're funded.
I 100% agree with you, John.
Yeah. The thing is like, I don't think people understand when somebody goes to a charter school, the money goes with the kid, right? And everybody's like, yeah, but the money goes with the kid, so you need less stuff, except nobody takes 24 kids out of a single classroom so we can release a position, right? Like they're spread out throughout the
Correct.
school. You don't actually get to reduce anything, and if you lose 10 kids, it's 50
The
grand.
way I always described it to people was, it's private education, but publicly funded.
Yeah, I don't agree with
And
it.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with it either.
It's
Well,
amazing.
it was, go ahead, Joe.
It's
Bob.
amazing, and you probably know the number yourself. I haven't been there for a couple of years, but when they look at a $255 to $270 million budget, and they'll say 80-something cents, I think it's around 87 cents out of every dollar goes to pay staff.
Yeah,
When I
something
look
like
at
that.
those numbers like that, I say to myself, wow,
It's-
we do a pretty good job for only dealing with 13 cents left over.
I think
It's amazing with the work that is done when you look at it that way.
I think our number is smaller than that, our proportion, but yeah, it's a big number. It's a crazy number. Like the last teacher's contract was like 33 million out of a 70-something million dollar, maybe 68 million at the
If you
time.
if you look at
Yeah.
the state website that has the statistics on all the school districts, you'll find that Chelmsford is consistently below the average
Yeah.
for overhead-type costs.
Yeah, we're really good about it.
Okay, so the Chelmsford schools do a very, very good job of, relative to the entire state, managing the so-called administrative or non-direct educational expenses, I think.
Excuse me, Sam, very important part of the show.
Oh,
here
absolutely.
today.
There it is.
What do we have here today, Evelyn?
It's a combination of things. I had bananas, there's carrots, there's ground up walnuts, almond flour replaces half of the flour, wheat germ. It's actually good for you.
I already have.
Oh, well, that's no good then.
It's a very,
If it's good, I'll have 2 pieces.
I'm coming
John,
next.
how do you feel about what Texas just did?
I don't know what what did they do?
School choice, yeah.
School choice.
I mean, here's the thing is most of the people.
First of all, explain to the audience what school choice is.
So essentially, rather than
In your
putting,
mind.
so instead of the money going directly from your taxes into a school or a school district, essentially what they're saying is you can take that money as a voucher and you can go to another school, like a private school, and you can use that money. Although the reason I think people don't I don't think we'll ever do something like that in Massachusetts. I think the problem people have with that is the people that can actually use the vouchers in other places a lot of times are very affluent. So they're essentially taking their rich people money, going to another school, using other people's taxpayer money to get to go to essentially what is a private school. And again, that's only if they're probably managed poorly. We haven't managed that. I don't understand how it all works, like on a day-to-day basis. But I can say, if it's managed poorly, it can be abused, and maybe if it's managed well, it won't, but I just don't think people should be taking their taxpayer money out of a different public school to be able to go to a private school. Like the Catholic school, I don't think we should be able to do private parochial, right? I think that's all public money, so. But that's Texas's choice, they voted, and they're gonna have to live with that state-level education choice. Yep, so they have a choice to make, and,
Pay for homeschooling.
what's that?
Homeschooling, they pay for that too?
They're paying for
Yeah,
that.
they
too.
Yeah,
only,
and
they
see, I
only
don't-
give
I
you
don't go along with that one.
only $2,000 for that, but
there should be a cap on whatever it is, and it shouldn't be the amount of money that actually is a cost per
Yeah.
pupil expenditure with regard to that. When you're talking about charter
Evelyn,
schools,
respectfully, okay? Chelmsford has a good school department. They score very well. The United States of America is not the smartest school system on the planet. And it's something the unions have to take a good look in the mirror and say, look, what do you want to do here? We have to push excellence out the door. We have these kids for a while, and we're not pushing excellence out the door. Other countries are beating us
All over the place.
big time.
there's a lot to what you just said. We don't have enough time to discuss it in detail, which I can.
Don't you
but-
think these schools can do a better job? Public schools can do a better job?
Always.
Internationally,
Yes,
and
but
not
when you take a
necessarily
look at-
comparing apples to oranges.
When you
which is
take a
gonna
look
be our
at
point.
education around the globe, the United States of America educates all children.
Correct.
When you get into a comparison with Europe, Africa, Asia, they are not educating all children. They have different levels of education, and it's altogether different as to exactly what they're teaching. I have a soapbox. I'm not going to start on it currently, is that in this country, if they would focus on the academics and get rid of all of the social crap that they're trying to throw down everybody's throat, then maybe those scores would come up, because there's no testing on DEI on any of the other global stage with regard to education. So I have an issue with how they actually are delivering the education aspect of things. But when we were talking about charter schools, when I first got on the school committee in '98, that was when you started to have a lot of charter schools within the state of Massachusetts. And then as the years passed, there was a group of individuals that came because they wanted to advertise on school committee time about their charter school. And we gave them, I don't think I was chair, maybe I was chair at that point, I don't recall. But anyway, they had some time because they actually came and they were on the agenda and they said something, and I said, well, now you just had 30 minutes of time to advertise because you came and you brought your issue to us. They didn't think about it that way. And I says, however, as to your point that you made, John, I had said the same thing at the time, is that you're not taking enough students out to impact our budget.
Right.
And your operating expenses aren't what our operating expenses are because of how many buildings we have
Right.
and how many contracts that we have.
Right.
You are limited with what you can do, and under state statute, you do not have all of the restrictions that we have on how we can spend our money. So it is a little different situation with regard to those particular charter schools.
And
But
school choice will not happen in Massachusetts, you're right.
No.
You're
And
right.
again, Texas has the right to make that choice, and we'll see how it goes for them. I don't agree with it. I honestly have always felt that government services starts at the least of us, right? So when you have something like school, you worry about the poorest people first, right? The people that need the services, da-da-da-da. And these people that are taking these vouchers and running off don't necessarily need that.
I think that's a very good point.
Well, I think it
which
depends on the
People
state.
haven't really thought of, but to your point, I mean, that's whether you agree or disagree, and I know people disagree with this, but that's the
Do you have any
beauty.
private schools?
Beauty of our federal system is we have 50 different choices of how we want things to be done. So if you don't like the way stuff is done in Massachusetts, you can move to another state that is more to your liking, okay? And I think that's a great system.
Yeah.
To McDonough's question, he asked if there were any private schools in Chelmsford. Private schools are usually the pre-K kindergarten type, and maybe first grades.
Well, you got no private high school?
No, and we
no.
don't have a charter school anymore because that moved to
Tingsboro.
Tingsboro because they wanted to expand and there wasn't enough room to expand in Chelmsford.
Texas, this voucher would go to Notre Dame Academy, Roman Catholic.
It could.
Yeah.
It can go outside of the community.
know, a
The other
friend-
thing that happens with charter schools is that the sending community has to pay for their students to be bused.
Yeah.
So when we had the charter school in Chelmsford, this was a while ago, so you'd have to take a look at inflation.
We were
for
glad when
today's
it went to
numbers.
Tingsboro,
Oh,
weren't we?
absolutely, because we had between $50,000 and $100,000 a year that went into just the transportation costs that we had at that particular time, and we didn't like that either. So
Right.
it isn't as if when we all of a sudden we had an extra $50,000 when they left, but we still had to send the money because we had
Right.
students going there.
They essentially said, help us build these charter schools with public money, but you don't get any input.
Exactly right.
Yeah, right, so you will take the money,
Exactly
but like
right.
input wise, and again, if you're talking about like, if you live in a community like Lowell or Chelmsford, and you're a regular old taxpayer, like, they're literally taking.
Who's old?
Yeah, I'm just saying, they're literally taking your tax money that went into your schools and carrying it somewhere else, right?
Exactly, that's
And I don't
right.
think that's fair to the local taxpayers, I don't feel like it's fair to the children.
I don't
But
think a
that
lot of
school
people
in
realize
Tingsboro's
it
a very-
either.
Very
Oh,
nice
sure, it's
school,
a- I'm
for
sure
sure.
it's
Right, but
Yeah, but
but
people
there
should
were.
pay for it on their own.
Yeah.
But when they first started the charter school in Chelmsford, basically, the superintendent of schools says, well, if you don't like it here, start your own school. They
Yeah,
didn't
and they did.
realize that they actually did. So when you're
exactly
taking a
what
look at it, it wasn't maybe some of the reasons that you thought it was, and in many cases, it isn't. And the other aspect of a charter school that people don't think of in terms of the political part with relative to public school education is that it becomes competitive. And I think some people were hoping that by being competitive, the public school would step up to having a better education.
That was part of the thought at the time.
Right,
It
and the
was.
problem is it doesn't. And part of the reason to have public education, when you go back to the history of education, was so that all students of all incomes would have the same basic education, and it wasn't going to be a private school education where you only have those that are affluent being able to send their students to those schools. And we're not going to get into the discussion of higher education because that wasn't supposed to be the way it is today either, but that's the way it has become. Now, there was an article that I had, I didn't send it to you, John, but it was, I sent it to the group here, but not you, but it's from CBS News, and it has to do with Massachusetts. And it says, and it's Massachusetts youth soccer. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but I can send you the article, because it is interesting. And it's called A Sportsmanship Statement. And prior to the games, they read, all participants deserve the right to play in an environment free from hostile and distracting behavior. Please do your part to create a positive soccer experience for all. Poor sportsmanship will not be tolerated, and sanctions may be applied for violations of policy or codes of conduct. tent. And this has to deal with all of the parents that are out there that are screaming and yelling
Yeah.
at the referees
Because that's the
and
problem.
bullying
That's the problem.
the other students and making any comments. And it doesn't just apply to soccer, and it doesn't just apply to Massachusetts, because I have a grandson that lives in New Hampshire, and he's on the lower levels because he's only
Yeah.
7. But the way, what my son has told me is something very similar, is that you have parents that are cheering their son on because they're beating up my grandson, keeping him from getting goals. I mean, and they're violating all the different rules, and the referees are having so much trouble. What you have the parents encouraging stuff like this. And so I thought that was an excellent idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they've created any statutes or any other policies within the organizations that if you have a parent, you throw them out or fine them.
I'm not sure. I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of that can be established through values within a team, right? So how do you teach your kids? And then having parents show up and then have to be the thing. There's actually a sign in Acton. There's a ball field out there, and if you happen to walk in, if you happen to go there, there's a sign and be like, remember, these are just children. Like, nobody's going to the pros right now. So no, I don't know if it's gone anywhere else, but I absolutely agree.
I think it comes down to coaching, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
a
When
lot
you
of
have
coaching. Yes.
great coaches, will bring out a great team. But I know we're short for time, John. I was in the Army. The war ended. Vietnam ended when I was in my basic training. I went to Colorado for
You
3
lucky
years
SOB.
instead. But I know you spent some time in Afghanistan. And when I seen your website and I see the 2 young ladies there,
Yeah.
I think of the Taliban right away. Are they still in charge in a way over there? Because the way
Yeah.
they treated the women, it's crazy. It's bad.
Yeah, and I'll give you a really quick analogy here, just so you guys know. There's actually a person that lives in our town that part of their family is still in Afghanistan. The Taliban are still there. They're still active. They're harassing women. They're disappearing people off the streets. There's a resident that lives really close to here, really just a few miles away, that his daughters remain in Afghanistan. We've been trying to get them back. His wife and daughters were all almost arrested by the Taliban because he's gone, right? And they were like, "Where's your husband?" Da 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 da. So could you imagine having a bunch of, a 14 and a 12-year-old girl get arrested in Afghanistan while you're in the United States? They arrest people, they disappear people. There's sexual assault issues, both men and women, because the Taliban don't discriminate against who they put their power on. It's a terrible place. It's not safe for anybody, including Afghans. I'm hoping they turn around that policy about the TPS, temporary protected status. Most of the people on temporary protected status are typically like artists or professors or
Doctors.
doctors. Yeah, it's like
And
not
men
usually-
and women.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you, because I know that you're involved in like protests and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
However, I had this thought probably in the middle of the night. Can an act of Congress change that part of the immigration policy?
Well, he's not. I mean, TPS is controlled by the executive branch. So
Would you
I mean,
tell us what TPS is?
Yeah, it's temporary protective status. So that's somebody that comes. So for Afghans, I'll speak because I don't know how it worked for other people, for other groups. For Afghans, TPS were typically the people that, like, a nonprofit would go and say, "Holy crap, there's a teacher that we want to rescue," right? And so they would go in, they would do the paperwork, but they would have to get vetted when they come to the U.S. because they're in danger usually, and then they come here and then they figure them out. So temporary protective status is essentially saying somebody's come to the country and they can't return to their country because they'll get killed or kidnapped or
We
yeah.
fly them here, right?
Not
So,
anymore.
Not anymore. And those
No. The temporary status people now that you're talking about. The
They were
American
flown here.
government flew them here?
But the flights are a loan. They're not actually flights. They're not free, if that's what they do fly them here, but they have a
Who
loan
pays
program.
for the transportation?
So an organization called IOM, International something of Migration, I forget what the thing is.
So the people who got here did not pay for their transportation, they got it for free?
They did. They had to pay the loan back.
They borrowed the money? Gotcha.
So sometimes when like an Afghan would get here, they'd have like a $6,000 flight bill they would have to pay back. No, the flights weren't free. I know there was a lot of people that'd be like, they're flying around for free and all this stuff, and they did initially pay for them, but then we use government rates, and then the government would actually, IOM would actually receive loan payments from all these people that come here. So they weren't typically free, unless like a volunteer paid for it, right?
So what path should they take to get to citizenship in the USA?
They have a pretty good prescribed process. They go through, they have to get a green card. Once they get a green card, they
Do
go
most of these people
asylum.
have a green card now?
A lot of them do. Quite a few do. A lot of them are approved asylum, so they're pretty relatively safe. So usually they'll go to asylum, they have to make a case to a judge, and they have to go through all their vetting, and then they'll get asylum, and then comes green card. But there's years in between each of these steps.
So what's it going to take to make these people citizens?
It's just time. Like, my friend is an Afghan American. It took her 8 years, I think. It takes 8 to 10 years.
We need to figure out how to streamline
She's
this
citizen.
process.
You
Her
can
and her
spend 30 years on a green card.
Yeah, you could spend forever on a green card if you want.
Right, but the other point to be made is that the people that you're talking about didn't come over the border illegally and force their way into the country. They're trying to come in here on a legal basis, and you're trying to get them in here on a legal basis. And I think that is the biggest difference, that you can't lump all of the people into one big pot.
Yeah.
You have those people that are really trying to do things the right way, and then you have people that are thumbing their noses at you regardless of what, whether or not they're committing felonies or they're not committing felonies type of thing, and they're just basically saying, this is what we're going to do regardless, and, get lost. I think that that's something that needs to be stressed tremendously, is that you're trying to work with people that helped you do stuff and you know who they are,
Yeah.
versus the people that are coming across the border that you're not sure what category they fall under, as far as where they came from and what their purpose would be in this country.
Yeah,
And it
I
wasn't
do
asylum.
want to quickly say, though, I think this is really important. The language change on immigrants over the past few years has been tough anyway for me, because I'm a big pro-immigrant person. I do want to say that the same language people were using about Venezuelans and like all these, the criminals and rape and all this stuff has now filtered down. Now that TPS has been canceled for Afghans, and you bring it up on social media to people, they are now the criminals, right? So here's the thing is, there are people that were like, oh, I support your organ, now we're on TV, be like, yeah, deport them all. So I think the language that has been used on other classes of people, which I didn't agree with then, is now moving into the Afghan territory, because
Right, and I
all
don't
they
agree
see
with-
is immigrants. They don't care. They don't
Right.
care about me.
But I will
They don't
tell
care
you
about
that-
OIF.
that I don't mind making the stand that I don't agree with this particular part of it. I agree with an awful lot of what is
Yeah.
going on. I would say probably 95%. But there's those few little things that need to be tweaked. And lumping everybody
I mean,
together, I am not happy with any of that.
following-
Anyway, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for being here today.
thanks.
We'll continue this conversation again. Thanks, Bob and Sam, for getting up extra special early. And everybody stay safe and try to stay dry, because it's going to rain.
It's
some
raining
more.
now.
And just remember, we don't have to shovel it.
Tomorrow City Life,
Right.
Cliff Krieger's going to be here, Eileen Del Rossi, Fred Bahu, and Melanie Gilbert. That's Tomorrow City Life. We're out of time. Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
See you tomorrow.